Be careful when you hear what you want to hear from somebody that hasn't shown that they actually are walking in what they're saying. Right? All Herod had to say is, I just want to worship him. And could you imagine how excited that the religious leaders got? Herod's going to worship our Messiah. He said the right thing. Be careful about hearing the right thing and getting so excited that you don't discern what's actually happening. Herod said, I want to worship. God said, no, he doesn't. And so the angel tells Joseph to go to Egypt. That's not what we expect to hear, right? Take the child, take his mother, and go to Egypt. Now, later on in Jesus' life, there would be times when people would try to kill him and that he would seem to almost disappear. It would say that he slipped away. But this time, as a child, God tells Joseph that he has to take Jesus away, that he has to take him to Egypt. Now, when we hear Egypt, we're tempted to make much more of it than we probably should. Right? We over-spiritualize a little bit, and we forget that there are at least a couple of thousand years between Exodus and Matthew. And so Jesus is not being taken to the place of slavery. He's not being taken to Pharaoh's household. He's not being taken back to the iron furnace. In fact, at this time, Egypt had become a place of refuge for Jews that were fleeing from the often oppressive reign of Rome. Many scholars say that there were as many as 1 million Jews living in Egypt at that time. So, if we want to spiritualize something, maybe it should be that Egypt had become a place of safety and refuge, no longer a place of fear and bondage. Maybe if we want to spiritualize something, it should be that God had so redeemed the past that his people were no longer afraid to go to the place of their ancestors' suffering. And look what we've already seen in this story. God had brought Babylonian magicians to worship the Jews, and now he's sending Jesus to Egypt. Israel's two greatest places of suffering are now people and places of refuge in the birth of the Messiah, because God is a redeemer. He doesn't leave things the way that they were. He doesn't allow things to stay broken. They may be broken for a season, maybe even a generation, but there will be a point in time where God says, now I'm going to make things right again. So let me ask this, and I'm going to ask it gently and then move on. Maybe your family's trauma doesn't have to be your trauma anymore. Maybe we don't have to teach our children our triggers, but instead we can teach them God's power to redeem and restore and even recreate. Are we making room for redemption in the work that God is doing in us and around us? Are we allowing Egypt to no longer be a byword, but to be a place of safety?